Okay, let's start looking at our first phylum in more depth. The first one is phylum Porifera. Now remember I told you that these guys are the poor bearers, not poor like they have no money, poor like they have holes or openings. And if you examine a sponge up close, you'll see all of the little openings that run through that animal's body. They are the simplest of all animals. They don't have a brain, they don't have eyes. They are very, very simply made. They are asymmetrical. So remember back to those body plans where we were talking about the three options. You could have radial symmetry, bilateral symmetry, or asymmetrical, which means it doesn't make a specific shape, or it doesn't have a line of symmetry. You can't divide it and make a mirror copy. And so pores or sponges or porifera, they're all classified as asymmetrical. Now, if you look at the two sponges down at the bottom right corner, you're probably thinking, well, those look pretty similar, like they're kind of round. But remember that it's got to be almost a complete mirror image. And so if you put a line down through the center of those, they're going to have little things that are completely different on each side. We also want to highlight their type of reproduction. They actually have two types of ways that they can reproduce. They have asexual, which is the budding, and that would, to jog your memory, that's when we talked about like the hydra. Remember where there's a piece that grows off the side and then breaks off, and that piece that breaks off becomes a whole new organism of its own. There's and fragmenting. Then they also have sexual reproduction, and sponges have both male and female attributes. The thing that's really neat about sponges and makes them different from some of the other organisms is that they're filter feeders. And what this means is that they take the water through their bodies, and as the water flows through their bodies, they are able to absorb or take in the nutrients out of that water. It would be like if you could just sit in a bathtub of chicken soup and your body would absorb all the nutrients and you didn't have to eat it with a mouth. Okay, clearly sponges don't have a mouth, and so this is the way they're going to eat, is they're going to filter their nutrients out of the water that flows through their pores. They're also another vocabulary word that I want to focus in on, and that is called sessile. Sessile. This means they don't move. And the minute I say that, you're probably thinking, okay, wait a minute, Miss Berkmeyer. One of the characteristics of living things is that they have to be able to respond, and that means like they move and they have movement. But things can move and not change location, remember, because like when we talked about plants, we've seen when we had the sped up photography how plants do move a lot more than we realize. However, they don't change location. And so sponges are kind of like those plants in that they are sessile. They don't change location. Okay? So if you were going to take notes on this and you're writing your notes down, your Roman numeral 1 would be porifera, and I would put sponges in the parentheses, and then I would write down each of these different bullet points, or you could do it with the letters like capital A, capital B, capital C, etc. And this would be a really great way to have your notes nice and concise. If you're doing this, I would hit pause right now in the video and write these things down. Okay, so here are some really nice pictures of sponges. Sponges are beautiful. We always see like the fake sponges that you buy at like Bed Bath & Beyond or at Walmart, and most of those sponges, unless they say that they are actual sponges, those things are made, they're synthetic, they're not real. They're made out of like plastic and foam and such. Real true sponges are all kinds of really beautiful colors. They're usually a lot stiffer than the fake sponges that we buy, a little more rigid. Here are some more sponges that show the different variants in color and the different variants in body shape and body style. different textures. You notice that they are definitely asymmetrical, because if you were to try to place a line of symmetry on them, you wouldn't be able to do that and create a mirror copy on both sides. Roman numeral 2 is going to be phylum Cnidaria. The C is silent, so these are the cnidarians, and these guys are the guys that have stingers, and their stingers are called nematocysts. And that's the stinging part of the cell. So this is like a filament that shoots out of the cell and into the victim like a barb. Once it's inside the flesh of the victim, the barb hooks into their skin like a harpoon, and the filament then injects a stinging poison. So jog your memory about what you know about underwater sea creatures and see if you can come up with a mental picture of what you think one of these guys looks like. So the most important adaptation are going to be the jellyfish stinging cells. These are found on their tentacles and used for catching and eating their prey. And it's not just on jellyfish. This is going to be on sea anemones, Portuguese man-o'-wars, etc. So their tentacles and stinging cells, these are the things that paralyze their prey, and they're found at the tips of each of these things. This work? Well, you have this jellyfish, okay? We're going to use that as our example, and you have a fish going around, and the fish is swimming around the jellyfish and going about his business. When all of a sudden the prey is going to touch this cnidarian's tentacles, and those stinging cells are going to paralyze the fish or the prey and guide the food into that open body cavity. Remember, I told you they have a mouth, that open mouth area, to be digested and absorbed. So again, you have your fish, he's swimming around the jellyfish, he touches it, and those tentacles paralyze him and bring him into that opening, that mouth cavity. There the fish is absorbed and fed on. Okay, so again, they have mouths for digestion, which is that one opening. They have radial symmetry, which means you can divide these guys up by multiple different lines of symmetry, and you would have mirror copies on both sides. They come in two body forms. Some have both at different stages. So if you like a jellyfish, and we'll look at that one in just a minute, its whole life cycle, it goes through both forms. The first form that we're looking at is called a polyp, and that's these things on the left-hand side. These polyps kind of look like Dr. Seuss truffula trees. And then you have the adult jellyfish on the other side, on the right side, and that's going to be the Medusa form. Okay, now looking at the reproduction cycle of a jellyfish and like a life cycle of a jellyfish, if we start with the egg over here on the left-hand side, and the egg then develops, because it's been fertilized, it then develops into a planula. This planula attaches to the bottom of the ocean or onto a rock or a piece of coral or somewhere, and it begins to grow. And as the planula grows, it forms in the form of that polyp, okay, the truffula tree looking thing. Then the polyps continue to grow and mature, and they add layers, and these layers then bud or break off, and this produces an ephora, which is an immature jellyfish. The ephora then develops and becomes an adult jellyfish in that Medusa body form. Then once they're adults, they can produce their gametes, and then the cycle starts all over again. Here you've got some pictures of different cnidarians. You have the hydra, and the hydra has those stinging cells as well. This hydra is going through asexual reproduction, where it's budding on the side, and this little piece up in the top left-hand corner, this little piece will break off and become its own viable organism. You have a picture of a turtle, a sea turtle with a jellyfish on the right hand upper corner, and then the lower left hand, you've got some medusa forms, you've got some polyp forms, and then you have a sea anemone over here on the bottom right, which also has those stinging cells. Here's a picture of a diver with a jellyfish, and they're very beautiful creatures, and they come in a variety of colors and different body, not shapes. They all have the radial shape, but they have different features on them and different textures, and so you could divide this by lines of symmetry, and it would have a bunch of different lines of symmetry. Here's another one of a massive grown jellyfish as well. So if you're going to go ahead and add to your note page, this would be Roman numeral 2, and this would be the Cnidarians or Cnidaria. Remember that these guys have stingers. They have the nematocytes or nematocysts that inject that poison into the prey. Remember that they have mouths that they bring the prey up into to dissolve and extract the nutrients from. They have radial symmetry, and they have 2 body forms, which is polyp and medusa.